Undercover boss buys a plane from his own company, could not believe the pilot's story. Daniel Ortega, 61, the founder of JetBliss Aviation, built his company from scratch with a mission: safety, trust, and second chances. He was once a commercial pilot who risked everything to expose corruption at a major airline. JetBliss became his legacy, a private charter company praised for elite service and ethical leadership. But now something is very wrong. 6 months ago, Daniel stepped back from day-to-day operations after a health scare. The board installed a new regional director. Daniel believed the company was in good hands, until a voicemail landed in his private inbox. "They're using fake names, forged licenses. The next crash won't be an accident, and it'll be on you." Then came the second blow, an anonymous email. Attached were blurry images, pilot rosters with mismatched IDs, a grounded aircraft marked ready, and something even worse: a secret meeting agenda listing JetBliss for acquisition by an unknown holding company. Daniel knew two things. Someone inside his company was trying to destroy it. He couldn't trust anyone in the building, so he did what no one expected. JetBliss Aviation was once the crown jewel of private charter services in America. More than just a luxury airline, it represented a bold rebellion against the soulless giants of commercial aviation. With handcrafted leather interiors, world-class hospitality, and elite pilot crews trained in both skill and humility, JetBliss became the go-to for celebrities, CEOs, and even international diplomats. Its signature? A strict zero-ego policy. No matter your rank, cockpit, or cabin, you treated people with respect or you didn't fly at all. At the center of it all was Daniel Ortega, a 61-year-old Cuban-American former airline captain who had once been blacklisted from the industry for doing the unthinkable, telling the truth. Years ago, Daniel had exposed dangerous safety shortcuts at a major airline. It cost him his job, his pension, and nearly his career. But with quiet grit and relentless determination, he started JetBliss in his garage, refurbishing grounded jets, hiring pilots who had been pushed out for speaking up, and building a brand that believed in safety before profits. JetBliss soared, literally and metaphorically. In less than a decade, it became a global name, not for being the biggest, but for being the most trusted. But last year, everything changed. After a minor heart condition forced Daniel to take medical leave, the board insisted he step back and let a regional operations director oversee day-to-day affairs. Daniel, still recovering, reluctantly agreed. It was supposed to be temporary, but in just 6 months, the company he loved started showing cracks. Subtle at first: a few delayed takeoffs, maintenance teams working longer hours, a couple of 5-star clients quietly choosing other charters. Then it escalated. An anonymous review accused the company of running unfit aircraft. A trusted pilot resigned without notice and refused to answer Daniel's calls. And an internal report that Daniel requested about staffing issues was mysteriously lost in review. Still, Daniel tried to believe the turbulence would pass, until the voicemail. It came late one night. No caller ID. A distorted voice, digitally scrambled, but the message was clear. "Your pilots are being blackmailed. Someone's trying to crash JetBliss from the inside, and you're too far in the clouds to see it." Daniel froze. He replayed it 3 times. Was it a hoax, a disgruntled employee, or something worse? That night he couldn't sleep. The company he'd built as a shield against corruption was possibly infected by the very thing he'd sworn to fight. He couldn't risk alerting anyone. If this was real, someone inside the company was covering it up, and they were bold enough to threaten lives. So Daniel made a decision that would change everything. He wouldn't send a memo, he wouldn't schedule a meeting, he would go undercover. As a broken investor with a vague interest in JetBliss's new coastal elite charter route, Daniel quietly booked a flight under a fake name. No security detail, no announcement. No one, not even his assistant, knew. Wearing a weathered jacket, scuffed boots, and glasses he didn't need, Daniel Ortega boarded one of his own jets, alone. He thought he was just going to confirm a few internal rumors, but what he discovered on that flight would shake the very foundations of JetBliss. Hey, I know so many of you come back to watch our stories, and it means the world. But the truth is, most of you watching right now still aren't subscribed. If you're one of them, please take a second and hit that subscribe button. It's completely free for you. And for me, it's the biggest support you could ever give. These stories take heart to tell. Let's keep telling them together. Daniel Ortega vanished, at least to the world that once greeted him with handshakes and champagne on runways. No press statements, no board updates, no chauffeur. He re-emerged days later, not as the proud founder of JetBliss, but as someone almost unrecognizable. His salt and pepper beard had been grown out, dusted with ash to appear older, rougher. He wore faded, oil-stained jeans and a weathered utility jacket that carried the scent of gasoline and leather. A baseball cap pulled low over his brow hid the sharp eyes that once commanded flight crews. A subtle limp completed the disguise. Not exaggerated, just enough to suggest time had worn him down. He didn't want respect. He wanted truth. Arriving at the JetBliss Phoenix terminal, Daniel expected coldness. He was not prepared for chaos. The energy was tense. The front desk was cluttered, phones rang unanswered, and the two receptionists bickered quietly while ignoring guests. Daniel waited silently for nearly 7 minutes. No eye contact, no welcome to JetBliss, no offer of help. Finally, when he cleared his throat and asked about his scheduled flight, the woman behind the desk barely looked up. Delayed. Pilot's sick. No apology, no update. Just a clipped reply and a dismissive wave. Daniel's voice stayed calm but firm. Can I see the pilot roster for this route? Safety logs for the aircraft? The woman stiffened. Her eyes darted to a back office, then leaned in slightly and whispered, "Not available right now." Internal audit? That wasn't policy, that wasn't protocol, and that, he knew instantly, was a lie. As he walked toward the observation lounge, his stomach tightened. This wasn't just poor customer service, this was fear. Someone had told the staff to shut down inquiries. Someone was hiding something. Daniel slipped past the gate toward the tarmac under the guise of checking the aircraft himself, a move only a bold investor or an old pilot would dare make. And that's when he saw her, Captain Lisa Wren, standing tall in full JetBliss uniform, aviator glasses perched on her head, clipboard in hand. Daniel stopped dead in his tracks, his chest constricted. Lisa wasn't just any pilot, she was a brilliant but volatile star. Years ago, Daniel had given her a chance when no one else would. Her record was spotless, her hours unmatched. But she had a temper, and 3 years ago, when a high-profile client insulted her mid-flight, she abandoned the mission. Landed the jet mid-route out of sheer rage. That decision cost the company millions and endangered the lives of her crew. Daniel had no choice. He fired her himself. So why? Was she standing here now? Lisa noticed him watching, but didn't recognize him. She gave a fake smile, tight-lipped, professional, empty, and turned to the co-pilot. Just another rich wannabe. Tell ops I'll be wheels up in 15. Don't care what delay code they use. Daniel's mind raced. Who rehired her? Who cleared her flight status? Why would someone bring back the one person he swore should never fly under JetBliss again? He stepped back, retreating into the shadows near the maintenance shed as the plane prepared for boarding. That's when another man walked past him. Young, crew tag visible, uniform loose, voice low. Daniel heard just 6 words pass from the man's lips to another ground crew member. They switched logs again this morning. Daniel's heart stopped. The logs, the flight logs, the backbone of any operation, were being tampered with. This wasn't just a toxic culture. This was corruption, and his once loyal captain was part of it. But what Daniel didn't know was that Lisa had her own secret, and someone far more dangerous was giving the orders. The jet's engines roared to life, smooth and unhurried, just like every JetBliss takeoff was trained to be. Daniel fastened his belt, but his chest was tightening with every second they climbed into the clouds. From the outside, everything looked perfect. Too perfect. Lisa's flying was textbook, the kind that would impress auditors and lull passengers into comfort. But Daniel knew flight like he knew his own heartbeat, and something felt off. Too mechanical, too polished. No warmth in her pre-check, no chatter with the co-pilot, just precision and silence. Lisa wasn't flying. She was performing. Daniel leaned slightly forward in his plush cabin seat, careful not to draw attention. Daniel, quietly, didn't think JetBliss would rehire someone with a termination on record. Lisa stiffened, just for a second. Then she turned her head slightly, her eyes catching his in the reflection of the polished cockpit glass. Her face was unreadable. Lisa, coldly, "They didn't. Your new operations chief forged my file." Daniel's stomach dropped. A beat of silence passed, turbulent but not in the air. Daniel, quiet, jaw tight. "Who approved that?" Lisa glanced around the cabin. The co-pilot was busy checking altitude. The curtain separating the galley swayed gently. Then she spoke. Lower, controlled, almost like she'd been waiting to say it. "Lisa, JetBliss has changed. Now it's favors, bribes, and lies. The people flying these jets, half of them aren't properly vetted. They're signed off by whoever pays Evan." Evan. Daniel felt the blood drain from his face. He had personally appointed Evan Mercado as regional operations chief, a clean-cut man with FAA credentials and a smooth bureaucratic charm. Evan had even helped Daniel during a 2018 compliance audit. He'd vouched for honest hiring practices. He knew the JetBliss mission, or so Daniel thought. Lisa, quieter now, almost regretful. "I came back under a different name, new license number. I was recruited through a dummy firm Evan's team uses to onboard pilots off the books. I accepted, so I could find out who's pulling the strings." Daniel stared at her. The woman he'd once fired for nearly tanking the company was now trying to save it? Lisa looked down at her hands gripping the yoke. Her knuckles were pale. "Lisa, they're laundering flight records, rotating staff, replacing good crews with desperate ones. Why? Because they're planning to sell JetBliss to a foreign holding company. Piece by piece. Strip the brand, cash out the jets, dissolve the legacy. And Evan? He's not just cashing in. He's securing himself a seat on the post-sale board." Daniel's mouth was dry. His heart was pounding, but not from fear, from fury. "Daniel," low, furious whisper, "they're trying to kill everything we built." Lisa, bitter smile. "They already started." Daniel sat back slowly, every fiber of his being burning with rage. His face was calm. His mind was preparing for war. But what neither of them knew was that a third party was listening, one seat behind the curtain. A man with noise-canceling earbuds that weren't turned on, taking notes, watching Daniel, watching Lisa, and reporting back to Evan. Daniel kept his composure the rest of the flight. He asked questions like a curious investor, careful not to tip his hand. Lisa played along. She never looked directly at him again. But just before the plane began its descent into Phoenix, she leaned back in her seat, slipped a tiny USB into a coffee napkin, and handed it to him under the guise of clearing trash. Lisa, under breath, flight deck audio logs, forged rosters, internal memos. There's even a transcript of a meeting where they talk about falsifying engine inspection records. You get this to someone outside, and JetBliss might still have a future. Daniel clenched the napkin tightly. His fingers trembled, not from fear, but from hope. For the first time in weeks, he felt like maybe, just maybe, he could stop the bleeding. But that feeling didn't last long. As the wheels touched down and the engines powered down with a soft hum, Daniel looked out the window. 3 men stood by the hangar doors. Evan Mercado was in the center, arms crossed, sunglasses on despite the dusk light. On either side of him were 2 towering security guards in black JetBliss polos. Daniel's breath hitched. Lisa, tense. They're not supposed to be here. The moment Daniel stepped off the plane, Evan approached with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Evan, mock friendly. "Mr. Cortez, we had a report come in. Seems you tried to bribe one of our pilots for insider information? Mid-air, no less. That's a federal offense." Daniel blinked, stunned. Daniel in disbelief. "You set me up." Evan, voice calm, dangerous. "No. You set yourself up the moment you walked into my terminal, asking the wrong questions with the wrong name." Lisa stepped forward instinctively, but Evan held up a hand. "Evan, not a word from you, Captain Wren." You're flying on borrowed time as it is." Daniel reached into his pocket, fumbling for the USB. But Evan was faster. He snatched the napkin, pulled out the tiny drive, held it between his fingers like it was a bug, and snapped it in half with a dramatic crack. Then with a theatrical flick, he tossed the broken remains into a fuel waste bin nearby. Evan, mocking smug, "This is a clean operation, Mr. Cortez. We dispose of hazardous materials properly." Daniel, furious, his voice rising. "You've poisoned everything this company stood for. You think you've won?" Evan leaned in, his breath close. Evan, whispering, "You don't belong in the sky anymore, or in this company. Go play aviation hero somewhere else." Evan, aloud, turning to the guards, "Escort him off JetBliss property and make sure he doesn't return." The guards stepped forward. Daniel didn't resist, but as they walked him out past the hangar, a mechanic quietly watching from the shadows made eye contact with him, a young man in a JetBliss patch jacket. He gave Daniel the slightest nod and reached into his pocket. Daniel knew what that meant. There was still hope. Somewhere, someone else was watching. And not everyone inside JetBliss had forgotten what it meant to fly with honor. 2 hours. Daniel sat in a windowless conference room with peeling paint and one flickering fluorescent light. His knuckles were still clenched, jaw tight. He'd built this company with his bare hands, poured decades of sacrifice into it. And now here he was, branded a criminal, humiliated, and stripped of everything. No phone, no watch, no communication, just silence. The door creaked open. In stepped a tall, sharply dressed woman in a navy blazer, a storm in her eyes. Luciana Ortega, his 35-year-old daughter and co-owner of JetBliss. Luciana, sternly, "What were you thinking, Dad? Going rogue like some action hero? We could have lost you." Daniel stood up, heart pounding. Daniel, strained, hurt. "What was I thinking? I was trying to save our legacy. They brought back a reckless pilot. They're forging files, bribing their way through safety checks. JetBliss is burning, Luciana." Luciana stared at him, then slowly smiled. She pulled a small silver USB from her jacket pocket, the same exact model Evan had crushed. Daniel blinked. Daniel, confused. "How?" Luciana walked toward the table and set the USB down. Luciana, "That voicemail? We planted it." Daniel, eyes narrowing. "What are you talking about?" She exhaled, shoulders dropping slightly. Her tone softened, but it carried the weight of months of secrecy. Luciana, "We've been on to Evan for weeks. We knew he was leaking data. We suspected he was grooming fake pilots and planning to sell JetBliss off piece by piece, but we couldn't catch him red-handed." Daniel, "So you used me?" Luciana, firm. "We needed bait, someone Evan feared, someone unpredictable. And you were the flame." Daniel stumbled back a step, staring at her, stunned. Luciana, "Lisa works for me now. She was recertified, fully clean. I hired her back under a new ID so she could go inside. That USB Evan smashed? Decoy. The real one's already with FAA investigators." Daniel's heart raced. Part fury, part pride, part disbelief. Daniel, almost angry. "You let them manhandle me, humiliate me in my own company." Luciana, softly. "You built this empire by exposing the truth, Dad. That was your gift. We just gave you one last chance and to do it your way." She pulled out a folder filled with legal documents. Luciana, "The board voted this morning. Evan's out. His assets frozen. Internal Affairs is auditing everything. And starting next week, we're back in control." Daniel, quietly, voice cracking. "You set the trap, and I walked right into it." Luciana, smiling warmly. "No, you kicked the door down." Daniel sat back down slowly, overwhelmed. The betrayal he felt had twisted into something unexpected. Admiration. His little girl, his silent partner, had just saved his life's work. Luciana, gently, "We're not done yet, but this time, we finish what you started." Daniel looked at the USB on the table. Daniel, softly, "Let's fly this thing back to what it was meant to be." The sun rose over the Phoenix tarmac, casting a golden sheen on the JetBliss hangar. But this time, Daniel Ortega wasn't in disguise. He walked into the terminal in his signature leather jacket, the same one from his flight days, with Luciana and Lisa beside him. What greeted them was a room full of confused employees: pilots, flight attendants, mechanics, receptionists. Dozens gathered for what they were told was a safety debrief. Instead, they were about to witness history. Daniel stepped onto the floor. No podium, no fanfare, just truth. Daniel, calm, direct. Yesterday, many of you saw me as a stranger, a wanderer. Some of you ignored me, a few helped me, and some tried to erase me completely. The room fell silent, nervous glances. A few people shifted uncomfortably. Daniel, but this was never about ego. It was about trust. Something I built this company on. Something I now know has been broken. He took a long breath, letting the weight of those words settle. Daniel, our own regional director betrayed our mission. Pilots were let in without checks. Bonuses were slashed, corners cut, and some of you were pushed to your limit, while others were pushed out entirely. He turned toward Evan, who stood in the back, arms folded, trying to keep calm. Daniel, stern. Evan Castillo, you're fired, effective immediately. Your access is revoked, and legal proceedings have already begun. A collective gasp. Security escorted Evan out as he muttered something unintelligible. Daniel didn't flinch. He wasn't done. If you want to see more stories like this, where CEOs go undercover and expose the truth, hit that subscribe button now. You don't want to miss what's coming next. Daniel, every pilot license will be re-verified, every safety report re-audited, and every crew member, every last one of you will have your bonuses and overtime restored. The room erupted in whispers, some in tears, some in disbelief. Daniel, softer now. I stepped away because of my health, but I didn't step away from the values we built, and I will never let anyone profit off your hard work without respect. Then he motioned to Lisa. Daniel, this is Captain Lisa Wren. She made mistakes, but she took accountability, and now she's going to lead our new safety oversight division, with direct access to me and the FAA. Lisa nodded humbly. A few crew members clapped. Others looked stunned. And then Daniel turned to Luciana. Daniel, with pride. And this is Luciana Ortega, my daughter, my equal. The woman who outsmarted a traitor, protected our people, and saved this company. From this day forward, she is co-CEO of JetBliss. Luciana's eyes filled with tears. The room erupted in applause. But Daniel wasn't finished. Daniel. From now on, JetBliss will be the first charter company in America to stream pilot credentials live to every client before takeoff. Because if you're flying at 30,000 feet, you deserve to trust the hands at the wheel. The applause turned thunderous. Workers hugged. Pilots shook hands. The atmosphere had shifted from fear and confusion to hope and unity. Daniel looked around, his voice steady but emotional. Daniel, voiceover, as hopeful music swells. They tried to crash what we built, but thanks to truth, trust, and a little turbulence, JetBliss is ready to fly higher than ever. If you felt this story hit home, and you want to see more powerful undercover CEO stories exposing truth and fighting injustice, make sure to subscribe and ring the bell so you never miss a new mission. Your support helps us bring real stories that inspire and empower. Thanks for watching, and remember, sometimes the biggest battles happen where you least expect them.